Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to episode number 13. Recent episodes are published in podcast format on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, while all episodes are available in a video version on YouTube. And thanks to Brunjo Productions for the intro music created especially for this show. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, baseball fans, today is part 2 of our discussion with special guest Ron Bolstad as we continue to talk about baseball of the 1940s and 50s, including the Pacific Coast League, and a more recent look back at the 2012 World Series between the Giants and Tigers. Of course, we'll also have a specially themed limerick for you along the way. So let's get right to it. So you were a Musial fan. Does that mean you were more of a National League fan, or did it run both ways?
Well, I rooted for the Yankees, but anticipating that you would ask who my favorite player was, back then, I tried to think, well, which Yankee? Well, I really never, I related to them because they were so much in the prominence of based on World Series appearances and all. But no one player, Yogi Berra, I always enjoyed Yogi Berra, and Phil Rizzuto, but Musial just stood out.
Yeah.
And when they Major League Baseball came to the West Coast, Sandy Koufax was my favorite. He was unbelievable.
Yeah. I've read a book or two about Koufax, and he's one of the all-time greats. That'd be fabulous. Yeah, just again, if we're talking about 1958 anyway, the New York Yankees finished first in the American League and won the World Series 4-3 over the Milwaukee Braves. Yeah, Yogi Berra, Tony Kubek, Mickey Mantle, Hank Bauer, Elston Howard, Bobby Richardson, Marv Thornberry, Enos Slaughter. A lot of familiar names: Whitey Ford, Don Larson, Virgil Trucks. Yeah.
Who was a Detroit Tiger, wasn't he?
He was a Detroit Tiger. And the reason that name rings a bell for me is we have a history in my family. Now we have had 3 generations have seen a no-hitter. And my dad started this. He saw Virgil Trucks pitch a no-hitter for the Tigers.
Really?
And then I saw in the early 80s, Jack Morris pitch a no-hitter. And then my daughter, even though he wasn't no longer a Tiger, but she saw Justin Verlander as a Houston Astro pitch a no-hitter in Toronto.
Oh my gosh.
So we have 3 generations now who have been to a no-hitter.
And your daughter is a baseball fan?
Oh, she's a baseball fan, yeah.
That's great.
It's hard not to be in this house.
That's great.
So a Yankees fan and a Musial fan and a Pacific Coast League fan. And those are some great stories. Thanks for sharing those. So if you had to pick a favorite game, would that be that All-Star game, or do you have a particular game, maybe one you went to, or just one that stands out in your memory? You might have watched or listened to it, but it was just a favorite game.
Well, this is kind of an oddball answer to that. Right up there would have to be that All-Star game, just because of all of the circumstances and all of those stars of that period coming together on one field. But when I was in middle school, the Chicago Whitesox would play spring training games in Pasadena, which was adjacent to my hometown. And on the weekends, my dad or mom would take me up, drop me off early, so I could watch batting practice and so forth. So I got to see Pittsburgh Pirates and New York Giants, St. Louis Browns, Cleveland Indians coming through playing games against the White Sox on the weekend. And I noticed that local peers of mine, middle schoolers, high schoolers, would crowd around the equipment manager and ask if they could be bat boy. So one time I tried that and I thought, there's no way I'm going to compete here with all of these guys with their jostling around and trying to get the attention of the equipment manager. So I talked my mother into playing hooky on a weekday.
Oh.
And she thought about that. She said, well, what are we going to put on the sick notice the next day that we have to turn in? And finally she said, well, I'll just put fever,
Baseball
parentheses, fever. Baseball fever. I'll be honest about it. So she picked me up at noon at the, and I was in 8th grade, at the school. We drove up to Brookside Park and near the Rose Bowl, and she dropped me off. I was able to be selected because there was probably one other person, and I got the White Sox and he got St. Louis Browns. It was a thrill to kneel or lean on a post right by the dugout and listen to the chatter and coaches and go out, pick up the bat. They gave me instructions, do not go out on the field until the play is over. So at least I survived that, but it was a thrill to be, part of it. So I thought, we thought, my mom and I, that, kind of got away with that. Only the office will know that we were out for that reason. Well, lo and behold, the next night in the newspaper was a picture of a batter and a catcher at the game, and I'm right in the center of it. I'm going to show a picture. I know that's difficult for part of your audience.
Yeah. So if you're on YouTube right now, Ron's holding up a picture of the game.
And I'm right in the middle, leaning on a pipe in a striped shirt.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And it's a shirt I would wear to school. And I happened to be gone on a baseball day, and all my peers in my class knew I loved baseball. So the word got out. There I was at the game. Couldn't deny it.
Oh, that's great.
March of 53.
March of 53.
And,
so your secret kind of got out there.
Yeah. Here's the program from the game.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Chicago White Sox, Brookside Park home schedule, Monday, March 23 versus St. Louis Browns. What looks like you've got the score there, 9-4. Chicago White Sox.
That was it.
Spring training.
And the interesting thing about it is, it's my understanding this is the last time the White Sox trained in that area of Southern California, that they moved somewhere else, probably Florida. And the Browns moved to Baltimore. This was the last spring training game of the season. That was probably another inducement to play hooky, is that this was the last game.
The last game there.
Played at Brookside. Yeah.
Well, and clever of you to think to go figure out a way to go on a weekday when there wouldn't be so much competition to be a bat boy. So you were just wearing your street clothes then. There was no uniform.
True. Yeah. In retrospect, it was an unforgettable experience because the conditions there were so informal. The locker room was probably 40 yards from the field. It was a very crude locker room, concrete building, and the players in uniform would come traipsing out of there and parade, with their glove and their bats down to the field. And it was an open invitation to catch every one of them for an autograph, either before or after the game. So people were, surrounding them, escorting them to the field and back. But I compare that to a local friend of mine who over the recent years has been going to Arizona to spring training games, and how much more formalized, how much more structured it is, how much more protected the players are from the fans, unless you can, be down in the first row prior to a game and catch somebody that's willing to give an autograph. That informality was wonderful.
Yeah, that'd be paramount to that.
It was another era, is the way I look at it.
Era. Yeah, I had a chance to go to a couple of spring training games when I was in college, and I think 4 friends of mine, for the 5 of us, fit in an old my parents' Delta 88 sedan, and we drove. We took turns driving. We drove overnight from Michigan to Florida.
My gosh.
And we saw the White Sox, and that would have been the era with was it Fisk, and Ron Kittle was their star rookie, and Greg Luzinski, some of those big hitters from that era, which would have been in the middle 1980s. Yeah.
These White Sox in 1953, Nellie Fox, Louis Aparicio, Chico Carrasquel, shortstop, Nellie Fox, Minnie Minoso, who was just admitted to the Hall of Fame this year. Billy Pierce was the top pitcher. In fact, I think he pitched this game. So it was exciting. And the Browns, of course, were the Browns, kind of the doormat, one of the doormats of the American League, along with the Washington Senators.
What an exciting thing to get to do and play hooky from school. And
a lot of fun for an urban kid.
Yeah.
To have spring training come to right to that area.
So the last topic that I kind of had on my list of possible things to talk about, and I didn't mention this ahead of time, but knowing that you're a Giants fan, the Tigers played the Giants in the World Series as recently as 2012. That was not a good year for my team. The Tigers lost 4-0 in the World Series against the Giants. But that was one of those times when the Giants were winning the World Series in all the even numbered years. Game 1, Barry Zito beat Justin Verlander 8-3. So it looks like they hit Verlander pretty hard. Game 2, the Giants won 2-0. Madison Bumgarner getting the win. Sergio Romo getting the save in that one. Game 3, the Giants beat the Tigers 2-0 again. Winning pitcher Ryan Vogelsong, I don't remember him so much, and Sergio Romo getting another save. And Game 4, eliminating the Tigers 4-3 in 10 innings. Santiago Castillo got the win for the Giants, and Sergio Romo got another save. So,
my gosh.
If I remember correctly, I remember a Miguel Cabrera striking out for the final out. I think actually watching the third strike go by, which was really disheartening.
Yeah, I bet it was.
That was the year he won the MVP. Triple Crown.
Your hopes were great. I'm sure that he'd pull out a win.
Yeah. The last time that the Tigers have been in the World Series,
2012.
Yep. Well, are there any other things that you would like to highlight?
I, of course, thoroughly enjoyed the old Pacific Coast League games, and many of those owners of the 8 teams in the early 50s thought that the league should be a third major league. And after much pestering of Major League Baseball officials, the commissioner set down some ground rules that if they met these rules, size of ballpark and so forth, in enough of the cities, that there could be consideration for major league status, at least for some of the markets, and knowing that other markets would not qualify. But as I recall, there was not unanimity among the owners that all of this could happen. Some were more realistic about it. I really regretted to read, I guess, a year and a half or so ago that the old Pacific Coast League was going to be terminated, that name, under Major League Baseball's reorganization of the minor leagues. And last year, the Pacific Coast League, after almost 120 years of existence, became the Triple-A West. And Major League Baseball realized that that was a mistake. And I don't know what influenced that. I have not read that, but it's back to being called the Pacific Coast League. On the very coast here, the only two teams are Sacramento and Tacoma, unless you count Las Vegas or Reno. But the old Pacific Coast League that I enjoyed was strictly on the coast: Portland, Seattle, Oakland Oaks, San Francisco, Sacramento, Los Angeles, Hollywood, and San Diego. For a period of time, they'd play a week. A series would be 7 games, including a doubleheader on Sunday, and the second game being 7 innings, first game 9 innings. And then there were years where they split that and had shorter series playing 2 different teams in the same week.
So that 7-inning game idea for a doubleheader isn't necessarily new. I didn't realize that, because we did that a year or so ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
I followed the Hollywood Stars primarily, and they came out in shorts in 1950. Fred Haney was the manager, and everyone thought, oh, they're going to skin their knees, and some of the players objected, but they ended up wearing them on hot summer days periodically.
The White Sox did that for a while, and I know that didn't go over well.
Who did that?
The White Sox did that for a short time. Yeah. Yeah.
And they were one of the first minor league teams to televise their games. And I think they started a trend of manicuring the infield between, say, the 5th and 6th innings. And the reason they did it was that there'd be a gap in the game at that point, and they'd sell more at the concessions.
Okay.
The owner,
sense. A little bit of a pause, give you a chance to go and get your hot dog or your caramel corn or whatever.
The owner was a restaurateur, and he said, we need to sell more.
A little longer pause between innings here.
So out would come the little golf cart pulling the screen around the infield, and somebody manicuring the home plate and the bases.
Well, now I think all the teams do that. There's the 7th inning stretch, and there is that longer pause there. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, well, see, now there are 2 divisions: there's Pacific Coast East and Pacific Coast West. So Sacramento and Tacoma. The Salt Lake, Reno, and Las Vegas aren't exactly on the coast. And then in the Eastern Division, Oklahoma City, El Paso, Texas, Round Rock, Texas, Albuquerque, and Sugar Land. Not quite the same.
Prior to the 40s, I would say, Salt Lake City had a team in the Pacific Coast League. And if memory serves me, the Hollywood Stars moved there when the Dodgers came to Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So the Hollywood Stars had a couple of different iterations. The San Francisco had 2 teams at one time in the Coast League, the Missions and the Seals, and the Missions moved to Hollywood. I think that was the first franchise that was called the Hollywood Stars. And they played in Wrigley Field, leasing that from the Angels until they could build their own ballpark.
Okay, it's time for our Blimerick, our baseball limerick of the day. This time, a tribute to the PCL. Hollywood Stars and San Fran Seals. The Angels, Oaks, and Beavers played with great zeal. The Pacific Coast League, summer fun and intrigue. The old PCL was ideal. Well, it's good history to have. Thank you for that, Ron. And always a pleasure talking baseball with you.
And a pleasure to hear you chat a bit about your own interests and experiences, and that we share deep down some ways we enjoy the game more than others.
Yeah. I think baseball is really a connecting force across a lot of things. I think it really brings people together.
Our grandson pitches for the Medford Mustangs, the American Legion team.
Okay.
But it's fun to watch them, Phil, because it's small ball.
Yep.
They get their home runs, but they're bunting, they're stealing. There's not a parade of 7 and relief pitchers.
Right. Yeah, it's back to kind of the roots of baseball and the strategies and learning to play the game well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fundamentals.
All right. Well, thank you, Ron, for joining me today. Always great to talk baseball.
Thank you. A pleasure to be with you and to talk.
So that's all for today, my friends. Join us next time, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.